Hi, this is Jack Duval, CEO of Bantam Incorporated, a private investment office for attorneys located in New York. Today I'm doing a video entitled The Philosophy of Digital Assets. It's going to be the first in a series, and it is accompanied by a blog post and podcast of the same name, and I will post a link to those with the video. So, digital assets are something I've thought a lot about. I've been investing in them for a number of years. And I thought it was timely, to kind of take a top-down view of how these assets are truly different, from what's been out there and start to examine some of the implications from that. So first of all, digital assets are an invasive species. They're really alien. And this alien species has jacked into the capitalist system basically through a rogue modem. And it's causing convulsions the world over. It's kind of like in a horror movie when, something gets a hold of the machine and the tentacles start to go in deeper and deeper. That's what's happening with digital assets. Now, there's been a lot of challenges to capitalism before, and that has basically resulted in those challenges either going the way of the 8-track or just being subsumed into the capitalist machinery. And that's because those challenges were really more incremental. They weren't very well understood, and they were just kind of variations on a theme. Now, cryptocurrencies are really different. They are truly alien. And they're so alien that in my mind, they mark a paradigm shift in capitalism and in essentially all aspects of life, economic, social, political. The ramifications are going to be profound and they're going to be pervasive. There's really no part of society that will not be touched by this. So if you think back, these structures, economic, social, political, they have been relatively fixed since the last paradigm shift. And that's when we went from feudalism to capitalism. Now, if you look, that shift started in the 10th century and kind of kept on going until the 17th century, maybe a little bit later. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776. And I mean, it was remarkable for him to write that because at that point, England was only about 10% industrialized. But he was able to see very clearly what was coming. So I feel like we're at that kind of 1776 moment where these digital assets are very new, but the changes are coming. And if we really think about things deeply, we can see that. So one of the and by the way, I'm very bullish on digital assets, but I'm not some kind of crypto truther, like a lot of people are. And I'll talk about some of the downside as well. But, I think it's worthwhile to look at just how different some of these cryptocurrencies and digital assets are. So let's just think about some of the traits. Now, traditionally, a currency is a medium of exchange, a store of value, a unit of account. That's what currencies have been in the past. And cryptocurrencies are those right now. So they share that. But they're also an app. They're also platforms. And so they are something much different than just a plain vanilla currency. The other thing is that a cryptocurrency really has no ostensible goal or quote unquote business plan except for its own adoption. That's really all it's after at the end of the day. And that makes it really unique. Another trait that's truly remarkable is that anyone, you or I or anybody that we know, can unilaterally decide to go to work for the cryptocurrency, essentially, by mining it. You don't need permission from anybody to do it. You don't need anybody's approval. You don't need to get licensed or anything like that. You can just open up your computer and start mining cryptocurrencies. And the other remarkable part that goes hand in glove with that, you get paid for it. And nobody has to approve that either. It just happens because that's what's in the code. Try that with Goldman Sachs. Just show up and start working and expect to get paid without anybody, without talking to anybody. Doesn't quite work like that. So this is really different. Also, the intellectual property is open, right? The source code is completely available to anyone. Anyone can extend it. Anyone can build on top of it. And in fact, that's what is desired, because the more people that use the currency, the more valuable it becomes. Again, not many companies are doing that. See if you can go get TSCM's semiconductor intellectual property and start using that. Not going to happen. Another piece of this is that these digital assets have emergent properties. What that means is that there are unexpected results that come from the operation of it. And this is part and parcel of people building upon it. You don't know what people are going to build on it. It's completely up to the human imagination, and nobody can know in advance what that is. So that emerges over time. And the last piece is that if you use a cryptocurrency on a lot of these platforms, you can get paid for it. Now, this doesn't exist everywhere yet. This is a little bit ahead of the curve, but it does exist in some places where users get paid for using whatever it is on the platform, or revealing their preferences, or for allowing their data to be used by the platform. And I'll come back to this in a minute. But coming back to this idea of the paradigm shift, the paradigm shift from feudalism to capitalism took a good 7 centuries. This one's going to be a lot faster, and it's going to be in. You'll be able to count it in years. I mean, we're already about a decade into Bitcoin, and admittedly, the first few years were very much fringe oriented, but in the next decade, I think we'll see a tremendous amount of innovation and adoption. And if you think about adoption of things like the internet, which was incredibly fast, the adoption of crypto and digital assets is going to be much faster because it's being built upon the internet. In other words, the internet was built on dial-up phones, right? Dial-up phone modems. Whereas now, we've got pretty much ubiquitous high-speed internet, 5G as well on the way, being rolled out. Computer power has advanced exponentially. I mean, what you can do on a laptop now is light years ahead of what you could do on a computer, even a desktop computer back in, say, 1994. We have cloud computing now, which is incredibly cheap and robust. And, AI and machine learning have gone from science fiction to science fact. So with that infrastructure underneath it, the advances now are just going to be even more incredibly fast than the adoption of the internet, which is remarkable. So we'll also want to look a little bit more deeply into how capitalism is going to change. Now, in the past, you've seen capitalism change a lot of things, but this is going to change capitalism. So we've kind of got it going in the other direction now. And in the past, when capitalism did emerge, one of the big issues was you had this kind of traditional battleground of capital versus labor. And this is what Marx wrote, so much about, and he was right on so many things. I'm not a Marxist, but I've read Marx. Unlike most people who want to criticize Marx, they've never read a word of it and don't even understand it. But Marx was dead on because of a couple of things. Number one, if you take all the inputs to anything that you use, a phone or a computer or a car or anything, you take all the inputs and you put them in a warehouse by themselves, nothing happens. They don't spontaneously put themselves into, that full final form that you use. But if you add labor to the mix of those inputs, and you put labor in the warehouse with all those other inputs, then you get your final good. So Marx said, logically, labor is the piece that creates the value. And he was right on that. And if you talk to Jamie Dimon or anybody else on Wall Street, they'll tell you that the real assets of the firm, walk in and out of the office every day and take the elevator up and down. Well, that's a labor theory of value. Jamie Dimon is saying that labor, the people that work in the company, are the ones that create the value, and he's 100% right. But cryptocurrencies and digital assets are going to undermine that fundamental tension between capital and labor. And the reason is because in the digital asset world, we're going to have something that I'm kind of calling owned by use, where if you use something on a cryptocurrency platform, you're going to participate in the ownership of it, because that's how it's really designed. That's what's built into it. So you're going to be the owner, the user at the same time, and you're going to profit if the platform, whatever it is, gets adopted. So let's walk through this a little bit and unpack it. So in this kind of user domain, you've got three different kinds that at least I can identify now. There's a traditional individual or entity that uses a cryptocurrency for whatever its use case is. And that could be a lot of different things. There's a million apps and platforms kind of evolving out of Ethereum, where you have these digital contracts. So that could be one. So you use whatever you're doing on the platform and you get Ethereum, and maybe you hold some Ethereum. Then there's developers who are building apps on that protocol. They're also a user of it. And then you've got the miners who, kind of square the bucks on the blockchain, and they're also users of it. So everybody, all those three different kinds, the individuals, the developers, the miners, everybody is incentivized to spread the word and to have more people use the cryptocurrency, because then whatever currency they hold goes up in value. This is a network effect. It's subject to Metcalfe's law, where the value of a thing goes up the more people use it. But I want to focus on that first type of user, which is that individual. And in that owned by use paradigm, capital is created by these users, and they capture some of the value, because the earlier you are into a cryptocurrency, the more value you can capture from it as more and more people adopt it. And generally the cost to access that is zero. And I'm thinking of like a membership fee. There's usually nothing like that. You do have to pay a cost for a good or a service, but that's the same as always. So it's very easy to get onto these, and then to use them. But the individuals, and this is really different, can influence the success of their investment by spreading the word to their friends. It's word of mouth marketing. And if you think about it, you think about the adoption of Bitcoin, which has been extraordinarily fast. There's over 1 billion people with addresses now. That has happened with an advertising budget of zero, right? Bitcoin has not taken out Super Bowl ads and convinced everybody to use it. There have been no ads, zero. So this just kind of metastasizes and grows naturally by word of mouth. If you think of an example like Google, if Google had started out as a cryptocurrency search engine, cryptocurrency / search engine, it would have paid people in, let's call it Google coin, to use the search engine. Now, Google's current value is about 1.6 trillion. That's their market cap. So some of that value, not exactly clear how much, but at least some of that would have been captured by the users. And the earlier you had adopted Google as your search engine, the more Google coins you would have accumulated and would have been worth quite a bit between now and then. Now you could use those Google coins to buy, other Google services. If you had a company, you could use them to buy ads, or you could convert them to fiat money, to US dollars, and spend them, or you could just hold them as an investment. But this is how, this kind of user, owner, investor kind of all morphs into one, one entity carrying all of those traits, whereas before they've been all separate. Now, this kind of model where the user is the owner has existed in other forms. One of the ones that people might know is a mutual insurance company, where the policy owners own the company. And if the company has excess profits, then the company credits the accounts with a quote unquote dividend that reduces the premium payment that's required. So that's been a successful model historically. Now, the most successful financial firm in the history of the world is a mutual. And most people don't know this, but Vanguard, the mutual fund behemoth, is a mutual. And what they do is when Vanguard has excess profits, they reduce their management fees down. And that business model has basically destroyed, number one, the mutual fund industry. Number two, the active management industry on Wall Street. It's touched every part of America. Most 401ks now are all in mutual fund and index funds, and have, a preponderance of index fund investment options. It's just remarkable. So that was a bit of an alien form that came into Wall Street, not as alien as digital assets, but still very powerful. So some of that is, weaved into the basic DNA of digital assets. So that's going to be very transformative. In the future, I think companies like Facebook are in real trouble because somebody's going to start a digital asset equivalent of Facebook where you get paid for posting your content instead of having all your information zucked up and sold to the highest bidder. Now, all this being said, just a word of caution here. These digital assets are extraordinarily volatile. We're in the midst of a 40+% drawdown in Bitcoin right now. Over the past 3 cycles, Bitcoin has declined 90% once and 80% twice. I think we're in the midst of that right now. Don't know exactly how far it goes, but it wouldn't surprise me if Bitcoin certainly went back below 20,000, maybe to close to 10,000. Also, the Bitcoin maxis will not want to hear this, but it occurs to me that it's very possible that Bitcoin itself could just end up being kind of a minimum viable product that got put out first and is kind of proof of concept and ends up being left behind because essentially it has only one use case, which is as a personal reserve currency. And it has serious existential risks from many, many places, including obviously the biggest governments in the world. So they could, there's nothing to prevent the U.S. government, for example, from saying, okay, every Bitcoin transaction has a 20% tax on it. I don't think there's any way that they would ban it. They'll just say, okay, yeah, we understand you like Bitcoin, go for it. Pay us our, huge transaction tax at each step of the way. And then Bitcoin's effectively dead. Now, I don't know. I'm not predicting that's going to happen, but I do see those risks. Whereas something like Ethereum, which is essentially just smart contracts, the government, in my mind, has absolutely no interest in it. Like, who cares? People are already doing contracts now. If your home contract is done in a smart contract way on Ethereum, what do they care? It's just more efficient. They don't really have a dog in that fight. So anyway, just always a note of caution here with all digital assets, because in early stages of anything, there tends to be an extreme amount of volatility. So I hope this has been interesting. Thank you for watching, and I'll have more to come.